This is quarter 2, week 1 on Thursday. So make sure you're still doing quarter 2, week 1. Today is Thursday. And number 1 says, which numbers below represent a repeating decimal? Our first option is 3.357, or 3 and 357 thousandths with the bar over it. So that's definitely repeating. We have a negative 3.6, which reduces to negative 1/2, which is also a 0.5 or 5/10, which is negative. So that is not repeating. 7/10, you can write as a decimal, 0.7, so that is not repeating. A negative 1/3, to change to negative 1/3, which should be memorized by now. If you don't though, you take 1 divided by 3. 1 divided by 3, it doesn't go into the 1, add the decimal, bring the decimal up, add a 0, it goes in there 3 times, which is 9. 1 left over, add a 0, bring the 0 down, so it just keeps going in 3 times. So this is a repeated decimal of a negative 0.3 with the bar over it. So only 2 of those have repeated decimals. Number 2, we have to solve the equation 15 equals 7 minus x. Draw your line. Box up your negative x. Then I need to get rid of the 7. I'm going to get rid of the 7 by subtracting 7 to both sides. 15 minus 7 is 8. 8 equals a negative x. You cannot leave that as a negative x, so you just think of that as a negative 1x. So 8 equals a negative 1x. So to get rid of the negative, I divide each side by negative 1. So a negative 8 equals x. Number 3, we needed to expand 4/5 times a quantity, 20x minus 10. This is the distributive property. So I take 4/5 times 20x, and anytime we have a whole number, you put it over 1. I'm going to reduce by 5. That becomes a 1. This becomes a 4. 4 times 4 is 16x, because 1 times 1 is 1, so we don't need to put it over 1. Then we do 4/5 times a negative 10 over 1, because you have to take that negative sign with it. Even if it's subtraction, it's like a negative. So then I can reduce by 5, becomes a 1, this 10 becomes a negative 2, so then 4 times a negative 2 is a negative 8. So your final answer is 16x minus 8. Number 4 says a square A has a side length of, so one side of square A is 2x minus 7. And square B has a side length of a negative 4x plus 18. It says how much bigger is the perimeter of square B than square A? How much bigger? We need to find the perimeter. Perimeter of squares is 4 times the length. So I need to take 4 times 2x minus 7 and 4 times a negative 4x plus 18. This is square A and this is square B. I use the distributive property. 4 times 2x is 8x. 4 times a negative 7 is a negative 28. 4 times a negative 4 is a negative 16x, plus 4 times 18 is 4 times 18 is 72. So now it asked me to, how much bigger is square B than square A? So what you have to do is you take square B, a negative 16x plus 72, minus 8x minus 28. What you do for this is, if it's minus, you keep, or you keep the original, change And then I have to change both of these, because it's keep, change. I'm gonna change that positive to a negative, change that negative to a positive. So now I have a negative 16 and a negative 8, which is a negative 24. Oh, I forgot, that's a 72. And a positive 72 and a positive 28 adds to 7, 8, 9, 10. 100. So you should have, oh, I forgot my x. So a negative 24x plus 100. I should rewrite that to make it neater. A negative 24x plus 100. There is your final answer. Remember, when you're doing integers, it's keep, change, and if you have two numbers, you have to change both of them. Number 5 asks us to solve a negative 3 times 1 minus 6k equals 6k plus 21. I'm going to use the distributive property first. So a negative 3 times 1 is a negative 3. A negative 3 times a negative 6 is a positive 18k equals 6k plus 21. Draw your line. I'm actually going to move the 3 over. I do the opposite. So they cancel each other out. I'm left with 18k equals 6k plus 24. Now I'm going to move the 6k over here. So if that's a positive, it's going to become a negative 6k, and 18 minus 6 is 12k equals 24. Then I'm going to box up that k and divide by 12 on both sides to cancel. Those canceled, these cancel. So k equals 2. 6. What would the total bill be of a lunch that cost $7.99 with a tax rate of 7%? So 7% is my tax. So I can take this times, and I move to make this a decimal. I move the decimal point 2 places to the left. Add your 0. So now I'm taking $7.99 times 0.07. 7 times 9 is 63. 7 times 9 is 63, plus 6 makes 69. 7 times 7 is 49, plus 6 makes 55. Count your decimals. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I start at the right and I go 1, 2, 3, 4. So my amount there is 0.5593. But I can't use that for cents, so you round to the nearest cent. The 5, underline the 5, arrow to the right. 9 is greater than 5, so my cent is really 0.56. So 56 cents is the 7%. So then I go back to my $7.99 plus 56 cents. 6 plus 9 is 15. 9 plus 1 is 10, plus 5 makes 15 again. Leave your decimal, and 1 plus 7 is 8. So it really costs $8.55. 7. You're solving equations, but now instead of the equal sign, I have a greater than sign. I'm still going to draw my line down it. I'm still going to box up my negative 3x. I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. So we're still pretending like that's an equal sign. So I have a negative 3x is greater than 19 plus 5 is a negative 24. Still going to box that x. I'm going to divide by a negative 3, divide by a negative 3. So x, 24 divided by 3 is 8. But the difference is, if I'm dividing by a negative, this sign now actually you switch to be less than. So you actually switch the sign when you're dividing by a negative. If you divide by a positive, the sign would stay in the same direction. Number 8. same type of thing. 12 is greater than or equal to 3 times the quantity z plus 8. So 12 is greater than or equal to distributive property, 3z plus 24. Draw your line. Okay, I have my 3z over here, so I'm not going to move him, so I'm going to subtract 24. Subtract 24. They cancel each other out. A negative and a positive you subtract. So 24 minus 12 is 12. Keep the negative sign. So 12 is greater than or equal to 3z. To get z by itself, I'm going to divide by 3 on both sides. So now negative 12 divided by 3 is a negative 4. Because I'm only dividing by a positive, I keep the sign the same. So negative 4 is greater than or equal to z. So you keep the sign when you're dividing by a positive. Take a picture of your corrections and submit it to today's bell work